One of the reasons video games are popular is that they allow you to escape the worries of the real world by transporting you into a virtual wonderland. But for that to be possible, someone must actually build the game in the real world. In this episode, we will take a look at the people who make the games. Since this is a pretty heavy topic to cover, let us split it into three wide buckets. The platform holders are the companies that essentially own the most popular marketplaces. They have the final say on who gets to sell their games in their marketplace, and they also control the experience of the customers to a certain extent. In no particular order, here are the platform holders across the various platforms. On PC, Valve Corporation runs the biggest PC marketplace known as Steam. Other notable alternatives include the Epic Games Store from Epic Games, the Xbox Game Store from Microsoft, and a handful of other third-party stores that each have their own dedicated audience. While a game developer or publisher technically doesn't have to use any of these stores to release their game on a PC, they can't reach the dedicated gaming audience without using Steam or one of the other established stores. On consoles, each major console is its own platform. So the platform holders are companies like Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo that each run their own respective console platforms, which are the PlayStation, Xbox, and Switch. On mobiles, Apple and Google run the App Store and Play Store respectively. Video games are only one of many categories of apps available to download through these stores. For VR headsets, the market leader is currently the Meta Quest series of headsets, and Meta or Facebook is the platform holder, and they curate the content available on this store. With the exception of Apple, Google, and Meta, all the other platform holders are also notable game publishers, with some of the biggest games being published by the console platform holders, and some of the most played games on PC being published by Valve. So to an extent, these companies not only run some of the biggest marketplaces in the world, but they also influence what kind of games are played by the mainstream market, and they make a lot of money in the process too. What exactly do I mean by notable? Again, these are some of the biggest companies making the most visible games that are played by millions of people each day. To begin with, we have the first-party studios owned by the biggest publishers. Sony has a huge division called PlayStation Studios that owns more than 20 first-party developers. Most of PlayStation's popular games like God of War, Spider-Man, and The Last of Us are developed by one of these studios. Then we have Tencent Games, which either owns or has a significant ownership share in some leading studios like Epic Games, Riot Games, Digital Extremes, Supercell, Krafton, and a whole lot of others. This gives Tencent a massive presence in the gaming industry, covering mobile hits like PUBG Mobile to big-name PC games like League of Legends. Microsoft's gaming division is Xbox Game Studios, which, like Sony, owns a huge selection of first-party studios. This gives Microsoft control over franchises like Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, The Elder Scrolls, and also mobile hits like Candy Crush Saga. Next up, we have Nintendo, which always does things differently. Nintendo has a group of internal development studios, but they don't really have their own distinct identity. In fact, some of Nintendo's best-known games like The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and Animal Crossing New Horizons were primarily developed by a division of Nintendo called the Nintendo Entertainment Planning and Development Division. Doesn't sound too thrilling, but they get the job done. Moving on, we can now look at companies that don't work exclusively with platform holders. These are some really old companies that have established themselves as the pillars of the video game industry, for better or worse. These are companies like Electronic Arts, Ubisoft, Take-Two Interactive, Sega, Konami, Bandai Namco, Square Enix, Capcom, and I'm sure I may have missed a few more that have been around for decades. Like any other industry, it is this group of old companies that have defined the best practices in the market, and they employ the largest group of game developers in the world. But the mainstream gaming market is not everyone's cup of tea, and that is why we have the indie game scene. Indie stands for independent. Indie games are made on a smaller budget by smaller teams, sometimes even by one-person studios. These games may not look as flashy and impressive as the games made by the bigger companies, but indie games are where developers take chances to try new game mechanics or new art styles. This is essentially where the most number of risks are taken because there usually isn't a lot of money at stake, at least when compared to the bigger productions. The indie game scene has existed ever since the early days, but it only gained prominence once digital distribution became a thing in the 2000s. By the 2010s, it became incredibly easy for anyone with a computer and an internet connection to publish their game to the world, thus giving the audience access to a huge selection of games that was not available earlier. This choice also means that the quality of these games can vary wildly. But just like any other market, the higher the quality, the more visibility it gets in the form of word-of-mouth praise or coverage by big media outlets. These are the three broad divisions of the companies that make the games we play. But wait, the title of this video mentions the people who make the games, and all I have done is talk about companies. That's the thing. Making games is never really about individuals. Yes, there are a few incredibly popular and highly visible people in the gaming industry, but I don't think anyone can claim to be the sole reason behind the success of a game. Even in the case of indie games where the developer has worked on the game all alone, they have very likely used tools that have been made and perfected over several years by other developers. Making video games is always a group effort, whether you are working alone sitting in your bedroom or working among hundreds of other developers in a huge office. And it is this collective effort that gives us the opportunity to escape the struggles of the real world whenever we want. So to all the people who make the games we play, thank you. And thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next episode.